Kobe sent a stronger one to all of us. He was dominant over us, putting a smack down on us. He really did. He didn't say a word.
Monday morning, Grant Hill for 4 hours. A guy you dueled against since you were, what, 12 years old?
Ultimately, it seemed like he had everything that I wanted. He had a famous athletic dad that he knew and he loved. He's overrated.
He told Jordan he's overrated.
I hated him. That's what Jalen Rose says about 5 specific guys who made his life a nightmare on the basketball court. These weren't just tough defensive assignments. These were nights where Jalen felt completely helpless. Every single one of these 5 players represents a different way Jalen could be broken down. One destroyed him with silence. One used physical gifts that seemed unfair. One played with relentless competitive aura. One represented everything Jalen wished he could be. And one mastered the mid-range and just wore him down. We're going to walk through all 5 right now, starting with the most famous moment in basketball history. If you're feeling this story already, hit the hype feature and give this video some hype, because what we're about to dive into gets even more intense. The moment that defined everything came on January 22nd, 2006. Kobe Bryant walked into the Air Canada Centre in Toronto and absolutely erased the Raptors. 81 points. That number hangs over Jalen's head through every highlight package and documentary. But here's what people don't understand. Jalen has explained that the coaching staff made a catastrophic decision to run a 2-3 zone defense. The problem with running a zone without aggressive pressure is that elite shooters find rhythm. Kobe converted 28 of 46 shots, including 7 of 13 from three-point range. The quiet way he did it made it worse for Jalen. That's the thing about Kobe in this moment. He didn't trash talk, he didn't celebrate, he didn't beat his chest. Kobe was silent, completely silent. Jalen describes it like Kobe was a hunter, like the Raptors were obstacles that didn't warrant acknowledgement. That silence was more demoralizing than any verbal attack Jordan threw at defenders. With Kobe, you got ignored. The defense was so irrelevant that he refused to engage emotionally. 51 of those 81 points came in the second half. The Raptors had an 18-point lead at one point. Then Kobe took over. The scheme failed. Jalen was forced to watch one of the greatest offensive performances in NBA history unfold, while helpless to stop it. Moving to the next assignment that made Jalen feel completely exposed. Number 5 on this list is Glenn Robinson, the big dog. When people think about Jalen's worst matchups, they think about the flashy scorers, the athletic freaks, the guys with the biggest names. Glenn Robinson didn't have that global brand. He wasn't marketed the way Jordan or Bryant were, but Robinson was a mechanical nightmare for defenders. And Jalen will tell you straight up that Robinson might be the most underrated horror story of his entire career. Robinson was the first overall pick in 1994, the same draft class where Jalen went 13th. That gap between 1st and 13th haunted Jalen throughout his career because Robinson became a localized nightmare while Jalen was trying to establish himself. Robinson's game was built on technical proficiency that had no flashiness to it. He didn't need to dunk on you. He didn't need to create highlight plays. Robinson just turned over both shoulders from the mid-range and the post, and he'd find ways to score that just wore defenders down shift after shift. He excelled in what modern analytics call the no-man's land, that area between 10 and 23 feet from the basket where defensive help becomes impossible to provide. Robinson could take a single dribble and pull up with a release point so high that Jalen couldn't block it despite being 6'8". The reason Robinson was such a nightmare specifically for Jalen is that Jalen himself was a mid-range scorer who favored that same territory. Jalen knew exactly how to execute in that zone, but Robinson had superior strength and patience. Robinson would position himself, use his frame to create separation, and then execute a technical release that just couldn't be contested effectively. He eliminated the possibility of overplaying his strong hand because he could turn over either shoulder with equal efficiency. For a defender who relied on length and anticipation, Robinson was a masterclass in relentlessness and consistency. He formed a big three with Ray Allen and Sam Cassell during the Milwaukee Bucks era, and when Jalen's Pacers faced Robinson, it was a grind fest where Robinson just quietly scored 30 or more points without ever making a flashy play. He wore defenders down. That's the hatred Jalen feels for Robinson. Robinson proved that technical mastery and strength in the same areas where Jalen was good could absolutely neutralize him. Number 4 is Grant Hill. And this one cuts deeper than basketball statistics because it was never really just about basketball. Jalen openly admits that he envied Grant Hill in a way that went beyond professional rivalry. Hill had the picture-perfect life that Jalen desperately wanted. Hill was the 3rd overall pick in that 1994 draft. He was Rookie of the Year. He was the smiling face assassin, the franchise centerpiece, the next big thing. The media narrative around Hill was completely different from the narrative around Jalen. Hill represented elite pedigree and perfect packaging. His mother was roommates with Hillary Clinton. His father was an NFL star. Hill had the right parental guidance, the right coaching, the right everything. Meanwhile, Jalen was part of the Fab Five, a group the media coded as thugs and troublemakers, while Hill was the polished Duke kid who represented the right way to do things. That dynamic created a rivalry that went beyond defense. Guarding Hill was a constant reminder of the socio-economic gap between them, even though they competed as professional peers on the court. When Hill played for Detroit, Jalen faced him regularly in Central Division matchups, and Hill was absolutely dominant during those encounters. Before the ankle injuries that derailed his career trajectory, Hill was LeBron before LeBron, a versatile point forward who could initiate offense, rebound at elite levels, and finish with explosive power. Hill made All-NBA 5 times in his first 6 seasons. Jalen made none during that same span. Hill was collecting all-star selections while Jalen struggled to find a stable role with various teams. Statistically, the gap was immense, and Jalen watched it happen in real time while facing him night after night. Hill's game was built on what analysts call a twitchy first step, combined with a crossover that was unprecedented for a player of his height. Hill could take Jalen off the dribble or post him up, and his playmaking ability meant he was running the offense while also leading his team in scoring and rebounding simultaneously. Defensively, there was nothing Jalen could do to slow him down, because Hill was such a superior athlete in that role. The envy Jalen felt fueled his defensive intensity, but it also meant that every moment guarding Hill was a reminder that Hill had taken a path Jalen would never get to take. Hill was the golden prospect. Jalen was the kid fighting to prove himself. That psychological dynamic, combined with Hill's physical dominance, made him one of the 5 most hated assignments in Rose's career. Number 3 is Tracy McGrady, and this one is about pure athletic anomaly and physical gifts that seemed almost unfair. McGrady stood nearly 6'9" with a wingspan and vertical leap that made him look closer to 7 feet when he was in the air. Jalen describes his athleticism as pogo stick vertical, a term that encapsulates the explosive, seemingly infinite elevation McGrady could generate from a standstill position. The nightmare McGrady created for Jalen was completely different from the other assignments on this list. With McGrady, it wasn't about heart or mentality or cultural friction. It was about biomechanical reality and physical limitations. Jalen's primary defensive asset was always his length. Length was supposed to bother shooters, contest shots, make releases difficult, but McGrady's vertical leap was so extreme that his release point reached heights where Jalen's length became irrelevant to the outcome. McGrady could pull up for a three-pointer while moving at full speed, or create a shot opportunity from a broken play simply by elevating over the defense with ease. That combination of size, athleticism, and versatile scoring made McGrady virtually uncontestable by any defender. McGrady's peak years from 2000 to 2005 coincided perfectly with Jalen's prime, which meant they faced each other frequently in conference play. McGrady averaged 2 scoring titles during this period, and his game seemed effortless to defenders because he could get his shot off over anyone. In the 2002 to 2003 season with Orlando, McGrady averaged 32.1 points per game, and Jalen often drew primary defensive duty. The duality of McGrady's game created a true no-win scenario for Jalen. Play him tight on the hip, and McGrady's driving ability becomes a major threat because his first step could create separation instantly. Give him space to protect against the drive, and McGrady rises up for a jumper that your length can't contest. That's the trap McGrady set. Jalen lacked the lateral recovery speed to recover if he was beaten off the dribble, which meant he was always reacting rather than dictating. McGrady forced defenders to make impossible choices, and no matter which option Jalen chose, McGrady had an answer prepared. The effortlessness of McGrady's scoring made the frustration cut even deeper. Number 2 is Kobe Bryant. But we've already talked about the 81-point game, the most infamous moment. So let's go deeper into why Kobe as an overall assignment was so destructive beyond that one night. Kobe was a psychological assassin who weaponized defensive lapses into historic scoring events with surgical precision. He wasn't inevitable like Jordan was. He was precise, methodical, and absolutely relentless in his pursuit of breaking you down mentally and physically on the court. Kobe would find your weaknesses, isolate you, and attack the same spot over and over until you had no choice but to break under pressure. Jalen watched Kobe develop as a player over the years, watched his game become more and more dangerous and evolved, and lived through matchups where there was simply no answer to his offensive arsenal. Kobe could score from anywhere on the court with devastating efficiency. Mid-range pull-ups, off-the-dribble threes, post-ups against smaller defenders, cutting to the rim against bigger defenders. He was positional chess played by a scoring genius. The cultural significance of the 81-point game aside, what haunts Jalen about Kobe is the sheer competence and consistency. Kobe never had an off night against him. Kobe never seemed confused or struggling on the court. Kobe brought a professional silence to his work that made every possession feel like a masterclass in scoring excellence. He was teaching Jalen lessons with every bucket, and the modern era of basketball has only amplified how Jalen views that Kobe assignment because the game has evolved into exactly what Kobe was doing in the 2000s. Spacing, three-point shooting, isolation scoring, using pick and roll to create advantage after advantage. Kobe was ahead of the curve in almost every way offensively. Jalen's inability to stop him wasn't a failure of effort or intelligence. It was a failure of physical tools against a player whose game was specifically designed to neutralize the defensive tools Jalen possessed. Kobe knew exactly what he was doing, and watching it unfold was like watching a master dismantle a student in real time. Number 1 is Michael Jordan, and this is the one that still bothers Jalen the most, even more than Kobe's 81 points. Jalen consistently ranks Jordan as the hardest assignment of his entire career without question, citing Jordan's 10 scoring titles and his Defensive Player of the Year award as proof that Jordan operated on a level that transcended normal basketball. The primary case study is the 1998 Eastern Conference Finals, Pacers versus Bulls. Larry Bird was the head coach, and he made the strategic decision to put Jalen on Jordan as often as possible, using Jalen's 6'8" frame to try to disrupt rhythm and obscure passing lanes. It was a strategy born of necessity, an attempt to use size to slow down the most dominant scorer in basketball. It didn't work. Jordan averaged 31.7 points per game across that grueling 7-game series on 46.7% shooting from the field and 40% from three. Those aren't just good numbers. Those are absolutely devastating numbers for a defender like Jalen, who was specifically put on him to stop him. Game 7 of that series became the defining moment of the matchup. Jalen held Jordan to 9 of 25 shooting for 28 points, which should be considered excellent defensive work. It was his best individual defensive performance against Jordan the entire series. And it meant nothing because Jordan still had enough impact and command of the game to lead the Bulls to victory despite the poor shooting night. That's the psychological toll Jalen felt deep inside. Good defense still lost. Perfect defense still resulted in failure. Jordan's pressure forced constant rotations and created mental fatigue that made Jalen feel exhausted and unable to contribute on the offensive end. Jalen was a primary scorer for the Pacers, but guarding Jordan was a suicide mission that stripped him of the ability to be effective on both ends of the floor simultaneously. The psychological dimension of Jordan went way beyond just playing basketball on the court. Jordan used trash talk strategically to establish dominance. There's a famous story from Jordan's later Wizards era when Jalen was with another team. Jalen had scored 30 points by the third quarter and felt confident, so he started talking volatile and disrespectful trash to Jordan after a dunk. Jordan literally told him to never talk trash to Black Jesus, and Jalen got ejected from the game while making what could have been the greatest statistical performance of his entire life. That's how much power Jordan's aura and presence carried. His presence was so dominant that it could abate opponents into emotional errors. Jordan won 13 of their 21 career head-to-head meetings, a macro-level dominance that tells the real story. Jalen had flashes of success, moments where he scored or created, but over the course of their encounters, Jordan dictated the terms of the matchup. Jordan was the inevitable force, the player that Jalen knew going in he probably couldn't stop, and that realization haunted him. The thing that makes these 5 so special as a collective list is that each one attacked a different specific weakness in Jalen's defensive profile. Jordan attacked him psychologically. Kobe attacked him with precise efficiency. McGrady attacked him with physical anomalies. Hill attacked him with everything Jalen wished he could be. Robinson attacked him in areas where Jalen was good. Together, these 5 exposed every defensive vulnerability he had. The era made it worse significantly. The hand-check physicality of the 90s and isolation schemes of the early 2000s meant perimeter defenders were often on their own. There was no switching, no complex zones to hide weakness. You were out there one-on-one against the greatest offensive minds in basketball history. In the modern NBA, a player like Jalen with his 6'8" frame would be hidden in switching defense on 3s and 4s. But in his era, he guarded 1s and 2s against the greatest perimeter scorers ever. That positional mismatch created constant exposure. He was an old-school mid-range shooter forced to defend the architects of modern scoring. That's a battle he couldn't win. But what matters is that Jalen Rose played against these 5 night after night. He studied film. He competed with everything he had. Still, these 5 made him feel helpless. That's not a weakness. That's testament to greatness. Jalen Rose is an elite athlete who made the NBA Finals and competed, and he faced 5 of the most dominant scorers in history. That's the reality of playing against real legends. Jalen's willingness to admit who cooked him, to not hide from truth about these matchups, that's real strength. These 5 deserve the hate because they earned it on the court. Like and subscribe for more deep dives into basketball history.